In my last video, I took the plastic headstock off of the guitar neck, and when I ended that video, the wings were actually still on the guitar neck. I wasn't filming; I was just trying to see if I could hold the neck in one of my workbench devices, and I just gently kind of closed it, and the first one snapped off. And so, that was sort of a happy accident. I popped the other one off as well. And so getting started today, I'm going to try and modify these wings in such a way to get them to be, flush with the sides and kind of get this radius out of the neck. For comparison purposes, if you want to see what I'm talking about, you can see here that when I have my square next to this, that there's a dip in the middle. It's not too large. It's probably maybe a millimeter or so. And so what I think I'm going to do first is actually try and get this surface to be perfectly flat. In the case of this headstock, obviously I don't want to remove tons of wood, but it really won't matter for the geometry of this neck if I can get this side down a little bit and get this whole thing level. Once I get that level, then I can use this square again to try and make these sides perpendicular to one another. And then these wooden pieces are actually fairly square in their own right. If I look at this, yeah, and so in this case, this piece, from end to end is still touching the, the straight edge. And so, I'll just clean the glue off them a little bit, probably with just some light sanding against a sanding block. And then I'll reattach them to the headstock, and we'll have a fixed, hopefully very strong joint. To level out the top, I'm going to use this rigid sanding block. I get these at the home store. This is just kind of equivalent to maybe like 80 grit sandpaper. And so what I can do is sort of an underappreciated trick of putting pencil all over the headstock. What this will do with the rigid block is, as I sand like this, the first thing I'll do is start wearing off the high spots and leaving pencil. And then as I keep going at it, eventually all the pencil marks will be gone. And that's how I know that I've kind of hit the minimum level I need to, make this flat without taking a ton of material off of the neck. In wall time, it was probably about 5 minutes of hand sanding with the firm block to go over this neck, to go over the headstock. And now, when I look at it, it's approximately flat along the whole range here. And so with that surface that I can reference, the next piece is to go and actually try and make each of the sides true. See if I can get this in the camera here, but this side of the headstock is lower than that side. And so this is another place where I have to be really careful. If I remove too much of the wood, this piece will no longer be in alignment. These are still finished pieces on the back, old lacquer aside. And so all I want to do is just take off the tiniest amount to make this perpendicular. And with that, I'm going to use my bench plane. You use a bench plane to take off very, very fine shavings. And so what I'll do is I'll keep this next to me. I use my bench plane, just lightly take a piece off, a shaving off, and just keep going through it until I can get it perpendicular. You can see here how small of shavings we're talking about. It's literally, paper thin, little bits of wood coming off. And so if I do this right, I can square this up without fundamentally changing how thick this neck is. All right, so that side's pretty perpendicular to the face. Now I'll just work the other side. Now that the sides are perpendicular to the face here, I'll just sand these very lightly on my sanding block to get off any remaining glue. Turns out I didn't quite get it as square as I thought. You can't really see it here on the camera, but there's one of these ring lights in front of me. And just using my eyeball and kind of sighting down, I can see that there's a little bit of a hump on this side. And so back to my, my bench plane. Okay, so that's pretty good. What's pretty wild about this whole process is even though I've taken off such a small amount of wood, you can actually see in the headstock how much that they're not aligned anymore. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to glue this first one in place, aligning the back. The back is finished. I'm not necessarily going to level the back of this here. But what I'm going to do is try and make this flush to the back, make this approximately 90 degrees, and then I can resurface the top of this again to make sure that any extra wood that I've taken out, gets removed. And that way, the theory is that I'll have the least amount of finished work that I'll have to do with this. So the next step is I'm going to glue this on. I'm just going to do one wing at a time to really make sure that I can get the alignment the way I want it. I'm not worried about getting glue in the tuner holes. I'll end up going back and just drilling them out in the end. Okay, it's looking pretty good on that end. Just got a wet rag to wipe off the glue. I only really care about glue squeeze out on the finished side. If I get glue on this side, I can always just chip it off or do any more sanding I'm going to do. And so got this clip in place, got the center lined up. pretty hard to find the right place for these clamps, as you know, there are no really square surfaces on this headstock. So there we go. I got my 3 clamps on here. You know, I try to put some pressure on. I don't want to put too much and have everything explode, but I've got the seam on the back here nice and level with the middle part of the headstock. And so I'll let this dry for a while. Hopefully it doesn't move or anything like that. And then once this is good and dry, I'll flip it over and do the other side. It's been about an hour since I glued this one wing on, and so now I'm going to go back with the other one. Since I'm going to be clamping anyway, I'm not too worried about the glue still curing, because I'll be pressing on both anyway. If I were going to do this again, I would definitely make some clamping calls to give myself a square surface. As it is, though, I don't need to use a ton of pressure to hold this. It's really just giving the glue some time to soak into the wood. But I'm definitely doing it the hard way right now. So I'm going to let this sit for like an hour or so. This is the one that has the fresh glue, and then this is the one that I did prior to that. And so I'll let this sit. Hopefully when we're done, we'll have a nice strong glue seam, and then we'll figure out kind of what the next step's going to be.